oil a day. That represents 90% of the revenue. And a significant amount of that oil goes through the pipeline. So wouldn't it follow that if that pipeline shut down, that's going to have a major economic impact to them?
I understand what you're saying, Senator. Thank you.
Do you agree or disagree?
I don't disagree. I understand what you're saying. If something shuts down, then jobs can be lost, and I understand that. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Congresswoman. If you're confirmed, will you commit on behalf of the administration to consult with the three affiliated tribes about what DAPL means for the education, healthcare, infrastructure, and other services provided to tribal members? Will you commit to that consultation with the three affiliated tribes?
Senator Hoeven, tribal consultation is mandated in this government, and I would absolutely consult with tribes when issues are affecting them. And I also would just add on, Senator, that with respect to the executive order that the president signed, it does not affect tribal lands. It just affects public lands, the pause on the leases.
Right, Congressman, and that is a good point and an important point, because it does affect federal lands, which we have a significant amount in North Dakota. And in fact, last year, the Department of Interior dispersed $66.7 million in revenue to the state of North Dakota from production on federal land. So it's a very important issue to us. So I understand your point about the reservation, but the moratorium does affect our federal lands. So my question in regard to federal lands and first, would you expect imports of foreign oil to go up or down if we stop developing oil and gas on federal lands?
Senator, I would absolutely, if I'm confirmed, ask to be briefed on this issue and would be more than happy to continue a conversation with you on it.
If we don't produce oil here, then it's logical that we import more from places like Russia, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and other places. Do you think their environmental standards are better than ours, or not?
Senator, I am not altogether briefed on the environmental standards of other countries currently, but I am proud that here in the United States that we have put the safety and health of our workers as a priority.
Are you committed to working with us on trying to advance things like carbon capture and storage in terms of the work that we're doing, and which our state's leader? Will you commit to work with us on that?
Senator, it's my understanding that President Biden is open to many ideas about how we get to net zero. So I appreciate your ideas and look forward to speaking with you more. And of course, if I'm confirmed, I'd be willing to work with you.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. And next we have Senator Langford.
Chairman, thank you very much. Representative, good to see you again. Thanks for doing the second day of questions with us as well. As you know, we have 200,000 miles of petroleum pipeline already in the ground in America. We have 2.4 million miles of natural gas pipeline already in America. There's a conversation about adding new lines. That's gone on here frequently. Let me talk about existing lines that are already there. Generally, would you agree that federal agencies should work with pipeline companies to be able to keep rights of way up to date to ensure access to those pipelines already in the ground?
I thank you, Senator. It sounds like a reasonable idea.
Okay. In your understanding, does the Department of Interior have the authority to deny right-of-way renewals for existing pipelines that are compliant with all applicable laws and regulations?
Senator, where the Department of Interior has the authority over such issues, they would absolutely be important. And if I'm confirmed, absolutely take a look at that. And
do you think that the Department of Interior has the authority to deny an area where they have already an existing right of way, though, to go in and say there's an existing pipeline already in this area. As you know, there's thousands of miles of pipeline that travel underneath federal lands right now. Do you believe the Department of Interior has the authority to be able to go in and say you no longer have right of way in these areas and federal lands for existing pipelines?
Senator, of course, I am not at the Department of Interior currently. I can't fully answer that question, but I would be happy to speak with you if I'm confirmed, and certainly I'm sure the department would be happy to give you an answer on that.
But do you believe that the Department of Interior should reevaluate existing pipelines under federal lands?
Again, Senator, I can't answer that question because I don't know what the answer is. But if I am confirmed, of course, it's important to you. I would be happy to speak with you.
It's actually important to every American that wants to stay warm in the winter. And for everyone that flies in a plane or drives a car, it becomes a pretty important issue because if we lose access to pipelines that are already in the ground that go through federal lands or have right of way, we lose access. And what happens is all that energy then goes to truck traffic and goes to train traffic. Do you believe truck and train traffic moving energy is safer than a pipeline, or do you think pipelines are safer than truck and train traffic?
Again, I wish I could answer that question. I don't know what the answer is, Senator. I haven't seen those statistics.
I would go ahead and tell you that it's safer and less expensive to be able to move in a pipeline than it is on truck traffic or in train traffic. But we'll talk about that in the future. The goal of the Endangered Species Act, we've had the opportunity to be able to talk about this some.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe the goal of the Endangered Species Act is to keep endangered species on the list, or is it to graduate endangered species off the list?
I think the goal is to restore species. I think the goal is to work with communities to make sure that we're restoring those species so that they can survive.
Yeah, we have a wonderful little bug called the American Burrowing Beetle.
Yes.
That is in multiple different states. We have it a lot in Southeast Oklahoma. It was declared endangered and threatened before, and we did a long study on it. It's a bug that lives underground, and so we really didn't know what the population was. So for 5 years, there was a population study on the American Burrowing Beetle, and after 5 years of study, they found out there are a lot more of those bugs out there than anyone ever thought, and they're in a lot more places than anyone ever thought. And so for 5 years, that was the required study. It was the number exceeded every single year what the standard was to be able to set. So it should come off the list. Instead, there was a pause to say, but in 50 years, there could be a change in temperature. And if there's a change in temperature 50 years from now, it could affect that species. And so we're going to leave it on the list as threatened. So my question to you is, statistically, what do you believe about how we should handle endangered species? If they achieve all the population numbers, all the goals that were set to delist them, should we maintain all those species to say in the future they could be threatened, so we're going to leave them listed? Or should they be able to graduate off if they hit those lists? And then if in 30, 40 years from now we start to see a population decline, to relist them?
Thank you, Senator. And I know that it's important to look at the science when it comes to the Endangered Species Act. And I know that every listing is different. So what I would say is if I'm confirmed, I would absolutely work with the scientists who manage these species and absolutely take a good close look. I appreciate your knowledge and caring for the beetles in your state, and look forward to working with you on that. But in the end, I believe it's science that manages that.
I do as well. And when you hit all the numbers and the targets that science had set, it seems like you would actually graduate off the program. One more quick comment on this. There's leases, there's permits, and then there's what they're called sundries. These are the various items once you've got all through the permits, and it's how you put the roads in and just the decisions that are made. Typically, those are made in each region because the leases and the permits are done. The sundries have now been pulled up to Washington, D.C. with Interior for all those decisions that are typically made in the region to now be made in Washington, D.C. My question to you is, would you plan as the secretary to keep those sundry decisions in DC, or would the regions be able to have those decisions again as they have in the past?
As I have said many times throughout this hearing yesterday, it's important for local communities to weigh in on important decisions. And of course, I would take a look at that if I'm confirmed, but I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you raising that with me today.
So it's your hope
Thank
that
you.
the sundry decisions would return. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that I am not sure. I would have to take a look at it and be fully briefed on that issue before I could give an answer, but I appreciate the opportunities for local communities to weigh in on decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cassidy.
It's very tough. Am I on?
You're on, Senator. We hear you.
That you've handled a couple days of questioning, and I think I can speak for all my colleagues. We're not challenging to be rude. I'm representing those families who just lost their jobs because of the cancellation of the XL pipeline, which the Obama administration science said would lower greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm trying to represent those families whose jobs are threatened by what that action indicates the Biden administration is going to do. Not based upon science, based upon a political agenda which seems to be more concerned with paying off constituency groups' expectations than lowering greenhouse gas emissions or providing employment for fellow Americans. And that's a bitter pill to take when someone doesn't give a damn about your job because they got a political agenda and they're ignoring science. Now, it's not your fault. You're just the appointee, and as you say, you're just a messenger. But nonetheless, I'm going to speak to some of that today and give more light to the consequences of a politically driven, non-scientific-based agenda, which is costing Americans their jobs. So first, Senator Cantwell spoke about the Great American Outdoors Act. Turns out, oil and gas development in the Gulf of Mexico is what funds about 90% of it. So when Senator Cantwell was asking you to commit to funding it, and at the same time there is a threat to that revenue stream, that's kind of a way you can't answer that correctly. Your agenda of the Biden administration threatens the funding of the Great American Outdoors Act. It also, by the way, threatens the funding for the Gulf of Mexico, the GOMESA Act, which funds coastal restoration in my state. Now, let me just say the importance of that. By the way, when one of your predecessors, Ryan Zinke, came to Louisiana, a woman came to meet with him at a round table, and I'm quoting her. She described herself as one of the biggest liberals he would ever meet. But she understood the value of the oil and gas industry to Louisiana and more broadly to the country, given the conservation programs funded by U.S. Energy. Not a direct quote, but a good enough. So now, as regards my state, the funding we get from revenue sharing from Gulf of Mexico activity helps fund our coastal restoration, which is to say our adaptation to climate change. And at this point, I would like to introduce to the record, Mr. Chairman, a letter from my governor, my Democratic governor, John Bel Edwards, and his assistants on coastal restoration, Chip Klein, both the letter and the testimony, a letter from Mr. Governor Edwards and the testimony from Chip Klein.
Without objection.
And I'm going to quote a little bit from my Democratic governor's letter. We have a plan which will cost $50 billion over 50 years thereabouts to restore our coastline. GOMESA is the principal form of federal funding to achieve this. And canceling leases and program pause creates uncertainty in coastal planning processes, having predicted $389 million in GOMESA revenue over the next 3 years. Also, Louisiana is entitled to $9 billion of the BP settlement dollars from the Deepwater Horizon. We cannot access those dollars unless we have sufficient funds to apply. Any lag or delay in GOMESA funding calls into question the ability of Louisiana to realize the benefits of this $9 billion. Oil and gas production supports 85% of our coastal resiliency program. The consequences of these actions, this political agenda, go against the science and the economics of rebuilding my state. And by the way, you mentioned that you have relatives in Houma, Louisiana, goes against the interest of preserving their homeland. Now, I'm so frustrated by this, and it's not directed to you, it's to a political agenda, which is so injurious to what's going on. Next, let me also say there's been some discussion from Senator Cantwell about the greenhouse gas activities associated with oil and gas. But from the Obama administration, again, the science, if you will, that the EIA says methane emissions in federal waters in 2019 accounted for just 2.5% of nationwide emissions. That's from the EIA. 2.5% of nationwide emissions, but 17% of nationwide oil and gas production. And when President Obama's administration finalized their 5-year Outer Continental Shelf drilling plan, the EIA said that the greenhouse gas emissions from the activities associated with lease sales would be slightly lower than not doing lease sales. Why? Because if we don't develop our domestic production, then we import from overseas. There's been several questions as regards whether or not we would import. I would say that Mr. Cruikshank, who is a career appointee at BOEM, has testified in the House of Representatives. Indeed, if we decrease production, we do import. And I would also offer for the record, Mr. Chairman, a letter in 2018 signed by Senators Cantwell, Menendez, Schumer, and Markey, which actually asks the president to ask OPEC to increase production so we could increase more oil and gas, because oil and gas prices had gone up so much. And so,
Without objection, and Senator, your time is just about over.
Thank you. Not only do we have testimony that it does, but we actually have people recognizing that the shortage increases gas prices, and my Democratic colleagues asking we do that, even though the Obama administration says that if we substitute foreign production for domestic production, it increases greenhouse gas emissions. I'll close with this, Congressman Haaland. I truly hope, if you're appointed, that you're guided by science and not by the president's political agenda. You may have faith in it, but so far his current actions do not give me faith in it. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome back, Representative Haaland. As in Louisiana, Mississippi is a Gulf state. And one thing that's important to us is the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And, you know, if you're confirmed, I'm just interested in knowing what your priorities are for the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and the Outer Continental Shelf.
Thank you, Senator. And of course, I am not there. If I'm confirmed, every single piece of the Department of Interior will be important. I know that there are some amazing career staff who have dedicated their careers to ensuring that we're moving this department forward. The first thing I will do is consult with each of those bureaus to make sure that I understand fully the issues. But Senator, as I mentioned yesterday too, the Congress is a co-equal branch of government. I don't intend to, in fact, I intend to make sure that you are always going to be part of this important conversation. You know your state far better than I ever will, and I would appreciate your knowledge and your consultation on all of those issues.
Thank you. Also, we've talked about the Endangered Species Act with the senator that spoke a couple of sessions ago. Mm-hmm. And farming, agriculture is the #1 industry in Mississippi. 1 out of every 4 jobs is related to agriculture. So the Endangered Species Act, to help us be productive, is very important. And I believe it's critical to utilize it. You know, any tool that's provided in the Farm Bill to conserve endangered species while improving the review process in ways that lessen the administrative burdens on government, recognizing the needs of agriculture, as well as the needs of public and private rural suburban, and urban land and property owners and promote confidence in the regulatory process that affects us so greatly. Will the Department of Interior, under your leadership, provide the resources to find a solution to the Endangered Species Act consultation roadblocks for pesticide review?
That sounds like an important issue, Senator, and of course, that would be important to me. So I look forward to working with you. Striking the right balance, working in partnerships with folks on the ground, and certainly farmers are absolutely important to this discussion, and working to just find the solutions that we need to make sure that folks can work and sustain themselves.
And one thing that I'm hearing from my constituents is that we know that the low-income households pay a disproportionate share of their income to overall energy cost for various reasons. And since President Biden's recent executive orders restricting oil and gas leasing and halting the Keystone Pipeline, I continue to hear from my constituents, especially since we've just gone last week through an ice storm that we're not used to going through. Mm-hmm. They're worried about their rising energy cost. And, you know, we had to use different sources. We had to use natural gas when electricity was out. And they're very concerned about this right now. What is the thought process behind restricting the U.S. energy production as it relates to energy affordability for my constituents, particularly for the low-income households? What's the thought process behind that if we are so sure that it's going to increase our costs to the lower income?
Senator, I think that it's important that everyone have the energy they need to sustain their daily lives. As you were talking, I was remembering my grandmother at Mesita, where I talked about yesterday, didn't get gas or electricity or running water until the mid-70s. So I feel like this is 2021, everyone should be able to partake in those modern conveniences and certainly not break the bank. I know that having a diversity of energy resources will certainly help in times when we have these ice storms and climate events that cause power lines and so forth to go down. And I think that I always move back to the conversation I had with Chairman Manchin about technology and innovation. I think that we have a tremendous future ahead of us working to find the solutions for those things. I think that if we work together to find those solutions, that energy costs for families could absolutely go down. And I hope that that's the case. We have solar panels on our home. The electric bill is about $10 a month. I wish everyone had that.
Thank you. I know my time is out.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And now we have Senator Sanders. He's not? I'm so sorry. And we don't have Senator. Bernie is missing. We keep trying, Bernie. So whenever you show up, buddy, you're ready. How about Senator Marshall?
Okay, thank you, Chairman, and welcome again, Congressman Haaland. Good to see you again. I want to start off by talking about the Endangered Species Act. And my endangered species is the lesser prairie chicken, but every state, of course, has one. And I just want to share my story about prairie chicken. My mother's farm is 10 miles from Cassidy, Kansas. Now, Cassidy, Kansas is called the prairie chicken capital of the world for a reason. And growing up, one of our rites to passage was to go prairie chicken hunting with my dad and my uncles. And I remember very vividly, 10 years of age, I had a single shot H&R shotgun. We hunted Saturday, no luck. Sunday, no luck. And this is, you get up at 4 in the morning and you go out and you freeze. You sit in the middle of a milo field. So I was pretty distraught. And we saw one prairie chicken fly out into a prairie field of our neighbors. And I asked my dad and uncle, can I go shoot that prairie chicken? He said, oh, you don't have a chance. It'll fly before you get there. Went out, stalked it. And sure enough, 10-year-old little Roger Marshall shot a prairie chicken, his first bird. And I was a hero for the day. We took it back to the farm and we had prairie chicken and noodles. And we've seen the population decimated. That was a greater prairie chicken. The issue is the lesser prairie chicken. I was fortunate enough to be on the wildlife parks and the Wildlife Parks and Game Commission there in Kansas, and followed the prairie chicken really closely. In 2013, it was at its nadir, and just coincidentally, 2013 was the end of a big drought. And as it started raining again, habitat improved, and the prairie chicken population is double of what it is in 2013. And I think that's a story real common, you know, that droughts cause wildlife to go down, and it rains, the wildlife comes back. But as I really dug deep into that issue, voluntary conservation was the most successful. The government projects were miserable failures, but a couple ranchers, 5th, 6th generation ranchers, did some volunteer grazing changes and really were responsible for that comeback, along with some rain. So, you know, my 2 questions, the Endangered Species Act, is how do you feel about voluntary conservation in general? And then how do you measure success? We know how species get on the list, but how do you get off the list, just in general?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. I love that story. And yes, I am all for that. I mean, we're all stewards of this land, and if more of us took that initiative that those farmers did that you're talking about, I think our country would be in a much better place. So please thank them for me. I know that the ESA is managed by science, and I understand that, you know, we want those species to recover to a certain degree. I want you to know that I will absolutely pay close attention to this issue. I know that the partnerships that you talk about between states, between tribal nations, between local communities, those are very important for all of us to find the solutions and make sure that those species are there so that your grandchildren can have the same experiences that you had.
You know, absolutely, and that's the goal here, is those great memories that we can pass on. But and just in general, though, to push a little bit, what would it look like to you for an endangered species to come off the list? I understand we're trying to follow the science, but there's when humans interact with ecology, that's when the conflicts arise. So what does it look like to be improving the species enough that they'd get off the endangered species list?
Well, I imagine that it varies from species to species, but I know species do need to recover to a certain degree. And then I understand that, you know, their habitat, and so the things that keep them alive, as you well know, the difference between us and the animals is we have the ability to reason, and animals can only live by instinct. So they can't live outside of their environment. So I am going to, this is going to be an important issue for me, Senator, I promise. And I will look forward to, I'm not at the department yet. I don't have every single stat on the endangered species list, but you can bet that it will be important to me and to the department.
Okay, I want to talk about water rights just for a second. And again, going back to my boyhood, on Saturday nights, after we got all the hay hauled, we'd sit on the cellar and everyone would bring all their stories. And from time to time, you live out in the country, there's going to be a water rights issue. And I just remember my granddad saying 3 or 4 times, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. And I had no idea. Quivira Wildlife Refuge is 30 miles from my home. Beautiful refuge, a refuge that I've had the opportunity to hunt in and around it for decades as well. And there's creeks that flow into it, and they right in the middle of some really incredible corn land that we have to irrigate. And thus there's the conflict between the water rights of Quivira Wildlife Refuge and the farmers. And this corn growing is 90% of the economy for that county, 90%. I mean, this is important. These are the farmers whose babies I've delivered the last 25 years. So this is personal to me. You know, Quivira has a water right. Of course they do. And the farmers have a right as well. Quivira is a senior to it. But as I've seen through this drought, the duck numbers, the geese numbers have stayed great. despite Quivira not using all of its water right. That it's more, thanks to folks like Ducks Unlimited that are providing better habitat up north. The ducks and geese have done better. The water shorebirds, all those have done better. Does the federal refuge have to always use all of its water right? Why can't they share that with farmers in a more equitable, friendly fashion, I guess?
Thank you, Senator. And I know that water law is complicated and important. And I know that there are water attorneys at the department, and you can bet that I will seek their advice and look at this issue and rely on you to bring us your ideas about how we can make things better.
But would you acknowledge that the
Senator.
farmers?
Go ahead. Finish up.
Yeah, would you disagree with me though that the economics of the farmers is also important as it is the ducks and the geese?
I think coming from a traditional farming family who've been farming for centuries and centuries, farming is absolutely important. It's an American tradition. I support farmers and would love to find solutions to these issues, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Congresswoman, it sounds like it's been another long and challenging morning. And I've been at 2 other hearings, but I wanted to come back. And I know we're getting ready to wrap up. And I just want to come back to some of the fundamental propositions that your nomination is all about. The first is you get rural jobs. That is so important. And I'm not talking about this in an abstract way. I saw it when Congressman Neguse and I were putting together the 21st Century Civilian Conservation Corps legislation and a chance to create jobs for thousands of young people in the woods. And scores of vendors could sell goods and services as part of that program. And you didn't just say you're for jobs. You went out and you helped us actually get sponsors for the legislation. Why should that not be a surprise? Because you're kind of the league leader in terms of bipartisanship over there, in terms of actually getting people to go along with bills. So on the track record that we Westerners care about, which is jobs and collaboration, the kinds of things I've heard you talking about for the last couple of days is what I hear folks say they want in my most conservative counties. They say they want more jobs. They recognize that jobs and protecting our treasures aren't mutually exclusive, that you can do both, which you have said. And they sure as hell want everybody to get together and collaborate, which you have made your calling card. So I think I wanted to ask one more question about an area where, again, you've brought those principles, the question of jobs, the question of protecting our treasures and bringing people together. Another area where you've put those principles in motion, and that involves both water conflicts, which we have, as you know, all over the West, and trying to deal with tribal water issues, which is practically every member of this committee, certainly all the Western members, have those challenges. So give us a little bit of insight into yet another area where you're doing good, on the ground problem solving. And most of the members of this committee are from the West. So this is not an abstract issue. This is the real world we see when we go home and we have those town hall meetings. Tell us a little bit about what you have done on resolving water conflicts and tribal water infrastructure, 2 separate issues where I know you have a good track record.
Right. Thank you, Senator. And what I'll say is, you know, when I think about tribal water infrastructure, I'm reminded just recently of, you know, a few articles that I read about people on the Navajo Nation having to drive 20 miles just to fill up some water barrels. Some of these people may already have running water, but their water's polluted. And I think in 2021, every single American should have an opportunity to have safe and healthy drinking water. This is a human right, in my opinion. And I mentioned earlier that, yes, my grandmother didn't get running water at her village until 1975. I learned early on how to conserve water, because when you're hauling buckets of water across the village on a dusty road, you don't want to spill a drop of it. And I think that not one drop of water has come into or left our planet in 4.6 billion years. It's just that the climate change has caused our water to move in different areas. So we need to protect the water that we have. I am all for ensuring that we can come to solutions with tribal water infrastructure, that we can look at water in a new lens in 2021, when we know climate change is a drastic issue, especially in the West with the droughts that we have. And I hope that we can find ways to conserve, recycle, move all of those issues forward, so that nobody is stuck in a desert without any water to drink, essentially.
The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs in my state, and I appreciate the courtesy of my friend, the chairman. I'll just wrap up real quickly. They are sure looking for your new lens in terms of trying to deal with these tribal water issues. And Warm Springs is not alone. I can look right down this committee, and we see so many states represented by this committee who have these challenges with significant tribal populations trying to resolve, water issues. And when you're talking about tribal populations, by dint of that discussion, you get into the broader water conflict, questions, particularly in the West where there's scarcity. And as we wrap this up, I just want to make the case again that we started considering your nomination really early yesterday. I think you had some of the same sort of questions, today. We don't have people come back twice, very often. And I just want you to know, not only am I going to support you, but I'm going to speak for you on the floor of the Senate, because I think you have made the case beyond a doubt that you'll be there for rural jobs. You'll do it in a way that isn't divorced from protecting our treasures, which is in my part of the world. We want jobs and environmental protection. We see them two sides of the same coin. I think you get it. And I'll tell you the single biggest difference. And I talk about these issues with my friend Senator Manchin all the time, and all my Western colleagues hear it. When we go home, the number one thing farmers, ranchers, and environmental folks say they want is they want people to try to come together. They want to find a collaborative approach. And if you're talking about that being your priorities, you led the league over there in the House of Representatives in terms of people coming together. And when Congressman Neguse and I were looking for somebody who could help us, we said, we got a big idea. Really goes back almost to FDR, 21st Century Civilian Conservation Corps. We said, we need somebody good who people like and want to work with to go get us some House sponsors. That somebody was you. So I'm very appreciative. And as we move to wrap up the consideration of this important nomination, I want to clear I'm all in.
Thank you.
In supporting Congresswoman Haaland, and we'll hopefully get a chance to make those points on the floor of the United States Senate. Thank you, Chairman. No, I gotta go. I have to go.
With that, we have a few more questions that we have senators that would like to ask if possible. And then I'm going to maybe have to leave. If I leave early, then Senator Barrasso will continue. But right now we have a few. I'm going to submit my questions. And I just want to thank you for coming back and being so diligent and doing such a good job. I really appreciate Congresswoman Haaland very much. And with that, I'm going to turn my time over to Senator Brasso right now for questions.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. We have a couple of different things, and people have these questions because we're very concerned about our communities and where we live, the jobs that are included and related, and this major role that the Department of Interior plays in the lives and the livelihoods of so many people in our home states. On February 4th of this year, just a couple of weeks ago, I sent Acting Interior Secretary a letter which included 22 specific questions about his secretarial order banning oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters for 60 days. On Monday, the acting secretary sent a response which largely restates his secretarial order and fails to answer my specific questions. So I'm going to resubmit my 22 questions that will be addressed to you in writing and be part of the hearing record for this hearing. Now, to me, it's unconscionable that the people of Wyoming cannot get a straight answer from this department. And I know you're not in that position now, but there is an acting secretary who is refusing to answer the questions. So can I get your commitment that you will answer my questions as they're coming to you in writing?
Yes, Senator.
I appreciate that because I know the staff at the department is going to help you respond to the written questions from all of us in the committee. And I'm confident that with your help, we can get answers to these questions. So thank you. I want to follow up a little bit. We've had questions about the Endangered Species Act. It's an important conservation tool, as you've said, that was enacted to protect species from extinction. The proper application of the laws resulted in the recovery of several species. It's important to me that the law be applied in a responsible manner so that we can protect the species that truly need protection. Yesterday, when you were asked why you would sponsor legislation that would put the grizzly bears under permanent federal protection permanently, your bill in the House with your name on it, you said, I imagine at the time I was caring about bears. Well, I want to make sure you care about the law. There's a law of the land. Will you commit to doing everything in your power to fight the frivolous lawsuits and delist species that government scientists have concluded are fully recovered?
Thank you, Ranking Member Barrasso. And I know that the Endangered Species Act is extremely important, as you said. If I'm confirmed, I would seek partnerships with states, with tribes, with local communities to talk about this important issue. And
I'm talking about the law.
Sir, I will always follow the law.
Thank you. The global pandemic has created an unprecedented situation that has kept people isolated for almost a year. One way that people have coped with all of the restrictions from the pandemic has been by visiting national parks and public lands. You were critical of efforts to open federal land during the pandemic, even though it was done in coordination with state and local health departments. It's important to me that we are ensuring that the public has a place to go during this public health crisis when there are very few other options. Will you protect access to our national parks and other public lands during the pandemic?
Ranking Member Barrasso, yes. I believe now that President Biden is in office, there is a mask mandate on our public lands and in our national parks. And I feel that if everyone does their part to social distance and be careful and wear their masks, that we will have more of those opportunities.
Yesterday, you said you wanted to move forward with President Biden's Build Back Better plan that would, as you said, create millions of jobs in clean energy. Your quote from yesterday. So recently, John Kerry claimed that the fastest growing job before COVID, he said, was solar technician. And he said that the administration would give fossil fuel workers, in his words, better choices. And that the Washington Post fact checker then just looked into what former Senator and Secretary of State Kerry had to say. This is what the Washington Post fact checker said. They said he was offering false hope from the administration with a misleading use of statistics. The Washington Post went on and said it identified about 10,400 new wind and solar jobs over the next 10 years. We're talking about maybe 1 million energy jobs being lost. And the Washington Post says of John Kerry, you're talking about 10,000 jobs relative to 1 million. Do you have any evidence to dispute what the Washington Post has said about the statements coming out of this administration and the false hope being offered?
Senator, what I can say is I'm going to fight hard for every single job. I want people to work. I know what that's like. And I promise you that wherever I have opportunities, I will take them to make sure that people have secure futures. Every family deserves to have a roof over their head.
Well, we've heard similar types of rhetoric that we've heard from this administration and from John Kerry back in 2009 under the Obama administration. And we ended up with failures like Solyndra. The promise of green jobs to billions ended up with billions of wasted taxpayer dollars, bankrupt companies, and almost no actual jobs. Senator Daines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Haaland, good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
During the course of the last couple of days, Representative Haaland, you've implied that you would virtually blindly follow President Biden in his positions on energy and other important issues for the West, like land management. I can tell you, folks back home are really concerned about the lurch to the left of this administration. And if confirmed, you would be 8th in line in succession of the President of the United States. Isn't the role of a cabinet secretary to advise the president on these important issues, not just follow him blindly?
Senator, the way I have always taken any position I've had is I feel that I'm part of a team. And if I'm confirmed, it's working with all of the other cabinet secretaries, as well as with President Biden, and acting as a team. And of course, as I've mentioned many times, Congress is a co-equal branch of government. I don't think we can move these important issues forward by ourselves. We need to work together.
Yeah, thank you. Just the answer we kept getting, we're going to follow President Biden, and I'm hoping you would be a leader that would advise him where you want to go, and not just blindly follow, frankly, his leadership right now that's moving this country to a very anti-conventional sources of energy, and so forth. I want to follow up on my 30-30 question. You were the leader in the House on that legislation. It is President Biden's initiative. You're also the author of that resolution in the House. You clarified that you're seeking to preserve 30% of all land, including private land. What executive authorities do you have and will you use to accomplish that?
Senator, I don't have all the details of how President Biden intends to move the 30 by 30 initiative forward, but I do understand that he's hoping for many different folks to work together to achieve that. I was proud to support that. I know your former colleague, Senator Tom Udall, introduced it on this side of the Capitol. It's the 30 by 30 is the number that scientists believe we should conserve if we want to have a future for our grandchildren. And I feel like it's an exciting thing to start talking about the possibility of achieving that.
So there are multiple environmental laws that guide actions on federal lands, as you well know, NEPA, ESA, HHPA. In what meaningful ways do you believe our public lands are not being conserved?
Well, of course, yes, I know there's a plethora of laws out there that protect our public lands. Senator, I'd be happy to take a look at that and answer your question in its entirety and submit it for your consideration.
Thank you. You know, the USGS has already reported that 30% of our lands are in conservation status. So it's not clear to me what we're trying to accomplish with that resolution, but look forward to having further discussions on it.
Yes, I do too.
I know that my Colorado colleague, Senator Hickenlooper, wasn't able to ask a question about the BLM out west. Moving the BLM out west has made it easier for Montanans to connect with the agency that manages large areas of land in our state. Nice to have them in the same time zone. On March 10th of last year, you said that the Department of Interior was attempting to dismantle the Bureau of Land Management by moving the headquarters to Colorado. Why do you believe that moving the BLM headquarters to Grand Junction was so wrong?
Senator, at the time, I heard from a lot of different Indian tribes, quite frankly, who were upset about that issue. Now that the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management office, is moved to Grand Junction, and additionally, I know a lot of career staff left the Bureau because of that. They didn't want to move. I think that we need to first consider the well-being of the career staff there and take a good look at the issue. I don't have any intention at this moment of changing things, but I am not there yet. If I'm confirmed, that'll be an important issue to look at.
So at this point, then, is your sense you'd keep the headquarters there in Colorado? I know Senator Heck would probably want to ask that question. I'll ask it for him, for the folks in Colorado.
He has spoken with me regarding that issue a few times. Thank you.
Want to ask about some multiple use questions. It's very important to our public lands in Montana and across the West. Would you commit to a no net loss of timber harvest on public lands?
Senator, I don't think I can commit to anything at this moment. I'm not confirmed, but if I'm confirmed, I appreciate knowing and understanding your concern in that area and would be more than happy to continue a conversation with you.
Regarding no net loss, what about grazing permits? Would you commit to no net loss of grazing permits?
Again, Senator, I'd be more than happy. I mentioned earlier in the hearing that I understand how important grazing is to a lot of ranchers in this country, and
they're very concerned. They really are, as well as many of our men and women who embrace the outdoors and shooting sports. Would you commit to no net loss of hunting and trapping opportunities?
I support hunting and fishing, and I support the outdoor economy. I think it's important.
Would you commit to no net loss of it? The concern is losing it on a net basis. We look at it. There's a lot of concern right now about some of the your prior statements and what that might mean to policy outcomes and ultimately net loss of hunting and trapping opportunities.
Senator, I understand, and I promise you that I will talk with you. I will do my best to make sure that that those folks have opportunities to have their voices heard.
Senator Ross, can I ask one more question? Okay, in time. Thank you. If you put up chart number 4, and Representative Haaland, I appreciate your patience with all the questions you're receiving here, and I thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for your answers. During our meeting, when I asked you about active forest management, you responded that NEPA comment periods needed to be longer. And behind me is a map of a forest project that was proposed by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, a great wildlife conservation organization headquartered in Missoula, Montana. Half of the project area burned because it was delayed by litigation. It was in fact burned while it was middle of that delay. Do you really believe that extending the NEPA comment period is the best way to increase the scale and the scope of active forest management?
I'm not saying that extending is the best way. During our conversation, Senator, I think I was referring to the idea of public comment periods with respect to, for example, areas in my state where folks don't have access to internet, for example. They were taking comments only on the internet. And if you don't have internet and if you don't have computers, it's difficult to make your voice heard. I think what we need to do is make sure that folks who have opportunities and a means to weigh in when these issues are important to them. I'm not sure if lengthening that process is the answer, but certainly make sure that the public comment periods are real.
When we look at Senator, Senator Murkowski, we promised the nominee that she'd be done at about noon, so that.
Thank you. I will yield to Senator Murkowski, or the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Daines. Hopefully, I'll ask a question that will work for you as well. Representative Haaland, again, thank you for your endurance here on day 2. You, in response to Senator Hyde-Smith, when talking about the issue of affordability, this is a matter that is of extreme interest to me. Of course, we come from one of the highest cost energy states in the country in terms of the rates that people pay for their power to keep warm in a cold place. And so this is very personal. And your story about your grandmother not receiving power and water to her community until the mid-70s is something that, as you know, we still live in far too many of our villages, primarily Alaska Native villages. And one of the bright spots, certainly for those in the North Slope communities, is that with oil, those families have been able to not only heat their homes, but to do so in a way that is more affordable, to not only have the basics that we would understand in terms of staying warm and having water, but also the benefits of a public safety system, the benefits of transportation access, the benefits of schooling. And so I just ask you, as you look to the realities of American energy and how people are situated, that some of our most vulnerable in this country, the energy and vulnerability is a very real question, a very real issue. And so how we can help with jobs and also making this critical component of people's lives available to them. Sometimes our reality is that it is not the energy solution to have solar in Utqiagvik, but the opportunities that present themselves with natural gas, with the base resource that we have up there, is something that I just ask you to be understanding of them and their situation. I want to raise also the situation with many of our remote communities, primarily Alaska Native villages, that are reliant on so many of these policies that are in play right now. Many in this committee have heard me speak at length about the community of King Cove, a small community of 800 people out in Southwest Alaska, cut off from a major runway that can allow them an opportunity to get their people to safety when weather shuts them in on average 100 days a year. In 2013, the Secretary of the Interior turned her back on those people and said that somebody needed to be thinking about the birds. In the meantime, those people in King Cove have endured over 100 medevacs since the time that life-saving 10-mile, one-lane gravel non-commercial use road was denied. And our Coast Guard has been called in for multiple medevacs to get these people to safety. So I'm going to ask you if you will commit to, at a bare minimum, to meeting with the people of King Cove to discuss their plight and to hear their concerns, and do this, if you are confirmed, very early within your tenure.
Senator, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for sending me your memo. I took the liberty of reading more about the issues in King Cove. As you know, I feel very strongly that everybody deserves to have medical attention when they need it. And I appreciate you caring so much about the people there.
Well, I am passionate about them. I'm also passionate about our Alaska Native veterans who have not yet received entitlement to their Native allotments. We passed the bill last year to help allow for that processing. But until we can get these PLOs, these public land orders, withdrawn so that there is an availability of selection, they are being denied their entitlement to their land, their allotments. And that is, again, something where I'm very passionate about and would hope that you would understand there. My time is almost expired, but let me raise the issue that was just shared on the 30 by 30 and your commitment. Our reality is that we've already met the 30% in terms of our waters, lands and waters in conservation status. 66% of all National Park Service lands in the country are in Alaska. 29% of all BLM lands in the country are in Alaska. 25.5% of all Fish and Wildlife Service lands in the country are in Alaska. 12% of all Forest Service lands in the country are in Alaska. We have, as you know, ANILCA, an Alaska National Interest Land Claims Act, which pretty much established all that I have shared with you, or a good bulk of it. But our reality was, the deal at that time in 1980 was, we've got enough in conservation status in Alaska. We are doing more than our share, more, and we're happy. We love our parks. We love the opportunities that we have on our lands, but we also believed very much in the commitment that the federal government made with ANILCA, that the no more clause meant no more. And so that is something that, as we look at this 30-30 provision and the direction that President Biden is advancing under this executive order, it causes us some degree of alarm, because we have received no assurance that ANILCA, as we understand it, and as was agreed, will be respected as this administration is looking to put yet more lands and waters in conservation status. So I don't know if you'd care to comment about that, but that again is a very, very important matter to us.
Senator, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you do for your state, and I look so forward to working with you. I promise you I'll follow the law. I know how important these issues are to you and to the people in your state, and I look forward.
So you would agree that with ANILCA and the no more clause, that's the law, that what we have in conservation status will not be impacted by this 30 by 30 initiative.
I look forward to, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know what that full initiative looks like, but I absolutely respect everything that you have said, and I appreciate it and look forward to working with you, and that I will absolutely follow the law. And thank you, Senator Murkowski.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Heinrich.
I don't think I have any more questions if we want to wrap up.
Senator Marshall, do you have a final wrapping question?
Just one?
Please proceed.
Okay, again, if you haven't been able to tell yet, I'm passionate about the great outdoors, fishing and hunting, hiking, boating, and I want to make sure that my grandchildren have that same opportunity. The greatest memories of my life are times in the outdoors. Are you familiar with the Pittman Roberts? It's where fishermen and hunters put our money where our mouth is.
Yes, I believe I am.
So again, from my experience on the Wildlife and Parks Board, I got to see where that money was used. But it's an 11% excise tax on guns, ammunition, and fishing equipment. And in my humble opinion, I think the states do a great job of figuring out how to spend that money. Any thoughts how you think that money should be used or not used?
Well, what I will say is you hit the nail on the head every time, Senator, when you say that the local folks, the state should weigh in on these issues. And I agree with you on everything that you have brought up today, and certainly the fact that we want your grandkids to have those opportunities as well. So I want to rely on you to bring your ideas forward, and any way I can help, of course, I'm happy to.
Great. Do I get one more? Do we need to wrap up?
Go ahead.
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess the last point I want to make is, as we think about government policy, is its impact on that single mom that I've been delivering the last 20 or 25 years. And the price of gasoline, the cost of electricity is so important to them. And our ecology, our environment, obviously important to me as well. But As I noticed as a private obstetrician, whenever the price of gasoline got over $3 a gallon, and that was just, I was looking back through some notes, 2015, I noticed that those moms would stop coming to their OB appointments. Many of my patients drive 30, 60, 90, 120 miles. So that's how in my life I would see the price of gasoline impacted people. And I think the same impact is overly felt by hardworking Americans who live paycheck to paycheck on their electricity bill as well. Are you concerned at all about some of the policies you've described, what it's going to do to the cost of gasoline at the pump and the cost of electricity for these folks at home?
Senator, thank you for raising that. And that happens a tremendous amount in my state of New Mexico, where we're largely rural. There's only one veterans hospital in the whole state. And folks do have to drive a very long way. And that's one of the reasons why I have been so supportive of ensuring that that broadband internet is a human right, because I know that telehealth is a way to help a lot of folks with those issues. So, and we've seen that during this pandemic. If folks would have had those opportunities, things would be different. I just want to say one thing. I'd love for you to look at, because you're a doctor, the ECHO program. It was started by Dr. Sanjeev Arora in my state of New Mexico. And I think you would find that a very interesting and beneficial program to our country. It's helped a whole lot of people, and you can expand it in various and sundry ways. And I think you'd be interested to learn about that.
I'd be honored. Thank you, and I yield back.
And I look forward to, I'll actually put a little packet together on Project Echo, because I think our new member on the committee, and especially being a physician, will find it really interesting and maybe even a great place where we can all work together. So thank you all for being part of this hearing today. And I think the hearing is closed.
If I could just add, members have until 6 p.m. tonight to submit additional questions for the record. And I would like to thank you as well, and appreciate you being here both with us yesterday and today.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Barrasso.